In the last few months, there have been a lot of court rulings everywhere from state Supreme Courts to the Supreme Court, appellate courts, federal courts, all over this country, telling Republicans that your oppressive and repressive voting laws cannot stand. But that hasn't stopped Republicans from doing their best to try to steal this upcoming election. Even though the courts have told them that you can't enact these laws, everything from photo ID laws to restricting early voting hours to restricting polling hours, they've been told they can't do it, and yet they are still doing it. A great example, according to Talking Points memo, is what's currently happening in the state of North Carolina, where a judge struck down the state's essentially getting rid of early voting. Court said you can't do that. You have to reinstitute early voting. So the state says, okay, we're going to restrict the polling hours then. They're only going to be open a couple hours, a couple days of the week to meet the bare minimum requirements and basically skirt the court's decision based on a few loopholes. The same kind of thing with the early voting has happened in Ohio. We've seen it Florida, Texas, Wisconsin, photo ID laws in a lot of these places as well. What the Republicans are doing is technically legal, but highly unethical. And that's why you have groups out there right now like the ACLU that are fighting back, trying to prove that these states are not complying with the court's orders. And in many instances, the states are actually not complying with the court's orders, but they're blaming it on just bureaucratic, holdups, some regulations we have to overcome. They're dragging their feet to make sure that they don't make the changes that the courts have ordered before this year's election. And as everybody who's discussed voting rights talks about, who does this affect? People of color, who mostly tend to vote for Democrats. Republicans understand that right now their only shot at winning this year's election is to keep Democrats from voting at the polls. Donald Trump has virtually no chance. I think the latest forecast has about 18% chance of winning the presidency. But if you get rid of all the Democratic voters, there's nobody left to oppose him. So yes, he would clearly win. Republicans would retain the House, retain the Senate. But that's not exactly how democracy works. And that's what's really at stake here. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. It's about stripping American citizens of their very basic rights in a democracy. Not allowing them to vote because you didn't jump through enough hurdles that we arbitrarily put in place to begin with. That's not how this works. So when the time comes, if your state offers early voting, I suggest you take it. Go do it. Don't put up with the nonsense that they're going to try to throw at you on election day. Because if you show up to vote early and they say, well, you need this, this, and this, and you don't have it, you still have time. If you show up on election day without the necessary stuff that Republicans are trying to use to keep you from voting, you're going to lose your vote for that year. So find out what you need. Jump through these horrible hurdles they have put you through because it's just going to prove them wrong. If you stay home, if you don't vote, or if you don't get what's needed, you're letting them win. And I know it's a hassle, and I know it's unfair, but it's all that we can do at this point to fight back against the Republican oppression.